Hello viewers, I'm SB, and welcome to my 20k Q&A video. The YouTube channel on which you are presumably watching this passed 20,000 subscribers recently, and so I put out a call for questions to do an Ask Me Anything type thing. Boy, you all really came through. I got lots and lots and lots of Qs, way more than I was expecting, even though I was expecting a lot. And so here I am, to yammer extemporaneously at you for a while, and probably end up showing my whole A. So the first group of questions, I'm trying something here. It's a little experiment. Usually, when I do a video where I'm not also doing gameplay at the same time, I write out a whole script, and I stick to it quite closely. For this, I thought it would be more appropriate if I was answering the questions like in real time. I seemed natural and extemporaneous, and so I didn't prep for this, and I'm a little scared. But I have sort of roughly organized the questions by subject matter. And this first group here, I got a lot of questions about the jobs I've worked and my educational history and basically a bunch of personal history stuff that all kind of boils down to, hey SB, what's your deal? So I'm going to compress the answers to all of those questions together into one tight ball of knowledge here. Here is an abbreviated version of my deal. Hi everybody, my name's SB. I'm a 35-year-old man from Southeast Michigan, and I don't know if you know this, I like games a lot. I've been into video games basically like since I was able to form conscious memories, video games and computer stuff. We were quite poor when I was younger, but my mom managed to get a hold of, secondhand, I assume at a garage sale or something, a Nintendo Entertainment System, and just like a box of the games that someone had owned, and then so it was a real weird collection of games I had in my youth. I did have the legendary NES Top Gun game, which is just a horrible thing to inflict on a child. And before anybody asks, no, not even one time did I manage to land on that aircraft carrier. It's just not possible. And then my grandmother, who also raised me, my mom and my grandma basically like co-parented me. In part because we were poor, so my mom had to work a lot, and in part because my dad was, let's be kind and say, chronically unreliable. So my grandma, for the time when we were staying over at her place, picked up a ColecoVision somewhere, which, if you're not familiar with it, is like an incredible piece of video game history, and an old computer for me to play with. And I don't even know what kind of computer it was exactly. I was young enough then that I do not remember the details that I would need to know now to identify it, but all of the games that she got for it were on 5 1/4, if that gives you an idea of the era. So I have had access to games and computer stuff since I, basically, like I said, since I could form conscious memories, and I've been fascinated by it the entire time, all 35 of the years. I have a very clear memory when I was young of seeing Super Mario World for the first time in like it was set up in a kiosk in a Sears, and it was like, I was transfixed, man. It was a revelation. My mother had to bodily drag me out of that store. And I was like, listen, I like the thing you got me, but that's the real shit right there. How do we do that? And I've never looked back. My first job, if you could, I suppose you could call it a job, was basically IT, fixing computers. Any person who has a technical aptitude probably has had some of this experience where something goes wrong with your parents' computer and you fix it, and then if something else goes wrong because they're irresponsible with their computer, and you fix that, and then eventually, like, their friends are talking to them at work about what's going on with their computer, and your parents are like, oh, well, my kid's a whiz with that stuff, and so I don't know if it was really a job. It was sort of an intermittent freelance thing during high school, but it paid. It was the first thing I ever got paid for. It actually paid really well. Older people who do not know things about computers treat younger people who do know things about computers like wizards. And that's a real double-edged sword, but it did lead to me earning an hourly rate that honestly I think I have yet to match at any other job. I did all right. I did all right during high school. I did all right at the non-school parts of high school. I have never gotten along well with school. It's a personality mismatch. This is going to sound like I'm bragging, and I apologize in advance. I was in a gifted program all throughout school, but also I was a problem. I was consistently a problem. I got yelled at a lot. There were a lot of parent-teacher conferences. I eventually basically got kicked out of the gifted program for reasons not related to smarts. And me not getting along with school would continue on into college in a pretty dramatic way, where I washed out twice from 2 different schools, actually. Once I just sort of fell out. I would say I dropped out, but I never made the decision to drop out. It was never like a conscious action, like I'm done with this. I just sort of... I had a lot of unmanaged mental and emotional stuff, and my depression got really bad, but I didn't have the words to express... Like, I didn't understand that I had depression. I didn't really know what it was. So that sort of deprives you of the ability to deal with it, right? I couldn't even look for the tools because I didn't have words to put to the problem. And that things got real bad, and I just sort of stopped going to college. That's a grim period. The other college, I was kicked out. I got expelled from that one for, okay. Try to reserve judgment until the end of the story. If you asked them, they would say that they expelled me for arson. But I would like to just, at this moment in the story, I would like to just take a second to underline that I feel that is a gross mischaracterization of the fire that I started. It was a science experiment. It wasn't me. There was a group of people. We were doing a science. It was very safe. We had a fire blanket. We had a fire extinguisher. The fire was contained to a small metal receptacle, but we had discovered a thing and we were going to play with it. It was science, but the administrators of that school felt otherwise. I should emphasize also, nobody got hurt, no property got damaged. We successfully executed fire safety. But the administrators of that school were kind of shitty authoritarian types, and also it wasn't really that long after 9/11, and it was a whole thing. But suffice to say, I did not complete my term at that school. During my time at colleges, I earned roughly a quarter of a bachelor's degree in computer science at the one school and roughly 3/4 of a bachelor's degree in computer science at the other school, but I have been told that those do not add up in the way that I would like. And also roughly 3/4 of a bachelor's degree in English literature at the one school, because I was going to double major before everything went wrong. So I have some education, but I certainly have no degrees to put on my wall. And then after that, this is a great way to start this thing. This is a really uplifting story. After that, I went through, after the dropout due to unmanaged mental illness, I went through a long period of having an unmanaged mental illness that got really bad because of... first of all, because of the illness itself, but secondly, because of all the shame I was experiencing that I did not know how to process from having basically, like, allowing myself to be forced out of my life by my weird brain stuff. And during this time, I worked some crappy dead-end jobs just to get by, to exist in the world. I was a dishwasher at a restaurant for a while. I worked the counter at a Hollywood Video. Kids, ask your parents what Hollywood Video was. And, other just dead-end stuff like that. And it was a bad time, man. Eventually, the Hollywood Video went out of business, because it turns out that's what video stores do. That seems to be their primary purpose. And things got, if you can imagine it, things got a little worse for a while. But a friend of mine came through and managed to get me a software engineering job at the software company that he worked for, like an actual computer science, programming, building a thing job. And to be perfectly honest with you, dude kind of turned my life around, which is, it's a big thing for somebody to do for you. That's, honestly, my adult life is kind of a series of stories like that, where I get myself into a position that I don't know how to handle, that I cannot extricate myself from, and some person who cares about me comes along and saves my life in one way or another. At least once, actually, literally, and it's a humbling thing. I'm a very, very lucky person to have people in my life who care for me so much and can do for me when I need doing for, which is depressingly frequent. Especially considering that I don't think of myself as a person who's good with people. I have a lot of social anxiety, and also I'm an asshole. I try not to be, but I am not always successful. And so, like, for there to be people in my life who care about me in that way, it's a humbling thing. It's kind of hard to even take its measure, honestly. But yeah, that's that's where we are now. Hey, let's stop talking about SB and let's stop talking about this and start talking about other things about SB. Let's dial the energy up here and answer some specific questions. For example, Euphemistic Hug asks, 20,000 subscribers. Does that mean you get $20,000? That's a very exciting question. Hold on a second. Let's just log into this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh. Well, that's unless that frowny face emoji means 20,000, the answer to your question is no. Dean462 asks, I've always liked those brief moments of SB emotional honesty. By the way, I should say here, I'm clipping, if I don't say your full question out loud, please don't be offended. I'm clipping here around a lot of people saying a lot of very nice things to me, which I would feel a little uncomfortable saying out loud about myself. But I should take a moment here, close to the beginning of this thing, and say thank you all very much for the kind words. Like, so many people sent so many questions that have so many compliments embedded in them, and then on top of that, a bunch of people sent me messages, left comments on the question video, or just sent me emails that didn't even have any questions in them, that were just incredibly nice things to say about me. And it's really like, it is a show of support that kind of floored me. So thank you all very much for that. Anyway, clipping around some of Dean462's very kind compliments, I've always liked those brief moments of SB emotional honesty. You seem candid with things about anxiety and depression. And yet, you are Mr. Failure is Learning, and your gameplay style is always steady and confident, despite the occasional mess up in Dead Cells. Listen, I'll read the insults. I don't have any problem with that. So yeah, I'm curious how you view yourself as a person within this dichotomy. Are you wrought with anxiety and sadness most of the time, or are you actually pretty in control like you are in your Let's Plays? Yes. Yeah, both. It's interesting to me that you view it as a dichotomy, because that's not how it looks to me at all. The Failure is Learning thing is both a lesson and a survival strategy prompted by the other thing. I cut out, obviously, the story of my history was there's a lot of stuff that was elided in there. I didn't want to be talking about young ass B for 6 hours. But I have failed and screwed things up and blown up parts of my life and lost things due to my own actions. A lot. It has happened many times. And, you don't have a ton of options when you live like that. When your life is dotted with failure, often self-inflicted failure, you have to come up with a way of coming to terms with that and living with it, right? Like, I'm a person who experiences shame very strongly in a very self-destructive way. And so I should speak less generally. I specifically needed a strategy for getting through the fact that everybody's gonna screw things up, and I seem like I screw things up more than most people do. Looking at failure as a way to get better in the future, looking at a single failure as a way to potentially push myself toward an unbounded number of future successes, was partially a thing I had to do just to like pull myself out of the shame spiral, but it's also true. It's also like a real lesson that I actually learned from a life of failure, from a life of kind of being a failure. I think that this is the most important part of what I do now, this whole YouTube thing. Like, I like providing entertainment to people, and if you have watched my content and it has helped you have a good time, then awesome. I'm really happy about that. But I want so much to help people understand that failure does not have to be a scary thing, and that it can actually give you advantages over a theoretical version of yourself that had not failed. That lesson kind of saved my life, and so I want to do anything I can to pass it on to others. If I can make even a couple of people realize that and improve their lives because of it, I will feel like I have succeeded. I've done some good here in my time on Earth. Dean462 also asks, would you ever do a face reveal? I got several of this question. Some of them worded this way, like, hey, sometime in the future might you face reveal, and some of them more as like, hey, in the answers video you're gonna do next week, you should show us your face. Which, first of all, I guess is flattering, but secondly is a little strange to have a bunch of strangers on the internet be like, I need your face. Let me I'm not saying I will never do a face reveal, but I'm not going to do one right now, obviously. That's why you're getting this incredibly calming and appropriate Risk of Rain 2 footage of me just kind of screwing around. There's a couple of reasons I'm not going to show you my face right now. Number one, I don't want to ruin the mystique. You know, I think people, part of my presence that draws people in is the mystery. What is SB? Why is he like that? What is he ever talking about? And I don't want to spoil any of that by pinning it down. Secondly, obviously, if you were to look upon my countenance with your mortal eyes, there would be serious consequences that would last the rest of your life. I would warn you ahead of time, you know, it may not be wise for you to gaze upon me unaided, but I know that the draw would be too strong for many of you, and I just don't want to be responsible for the side effects from which you would likely never recover. And third, since quarantine started, I've been cutting my own hair, and it looks bad. I've done a bad job. Failure is instructive, and I'm getting better at it, but I'm still bad. Dean462 continues, no pressure, of course, but you've mentioned you like rats and bats and have the occasional hardcore comment, and I've wondered, is SB like some hardcore goth guy? Or maybe a secret Insane Clown Posse fan? Or maybe you're like some straight-laced Mormon dude who likes rats? Or maybe an engineer with a pocket protector playing video games after work. Okay, listen, buddy. I have never worn a shirt with a pocket, and I'm not going to start now. I'm like... I would not have thought of myself as a goth person. I've never dressed I've never tried to look goth, but it has been brought to my attention over the years that I have an awful lot of interests and aesthetic ideas in common with the goth subculture. I was never trying to be a part of any subculture, but I think I am accidentally goth. Yes, I don't so much dress it. I'm wearing a Branson Reese t-shirt right now, and no makeup or hair dye. So I think that kind of disqualifies me. Not that Branson Reese isn't goth. I am not a secret Insane Clown Posse fan, but I do want to take a moment and say something about that. I'm from Southeast Michigan. That is where the Insane Clown Posse is from. We have more juggalos per capita here than probably anywhere else on Earth. And I do not like Insane Clown Posse. Not a single one of their songs has ever done anything for me. But juggalos get a lot of shit on the internet, like almost furry levels of shit. And I just want to take a moment here to say, every juggalo I've ever known, and it's not that small of a number, has been like an incredibly kind and decent person who will go out of their way to do things for others, and just like, I am not necessarily a fan of the Insane Clown Posse, but I am a big fan of people who are fans of the Insane Clown Posse. Thumbs up to juggalos, is what I'm saying. Thank you for the work you do. I would pass you my hatchet anytime. Also, they're right, by the way, about the Faygo. Faygo is excellent. Peach Faygo is like the Cadillac of soda pops. Renzi asks... Nope, sorry, that's another question about my face. Nickel Cobalt asks, have you ever played an RPG game? For example, Dungeons & Dragons? And if so, what role do you like to play? I have, in fact, played an RPG game or two. I played my first RPG session when I was probably 8 or 9. My uncle had been into D&D in the before times, and he had his AD&D Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual on his bookshelf in his basement. And so when we went over there to my aunts and uncles, I would just get like totally absorbed in those books. I was fascinated by them. You might notice this is a theme in my life. I see a thing and I become fascinated by it, and it reshapes everything about me. This happens every 6 to 8 weeks. And I badgered him with questions until he was finally like, okay, let me show you what the game is. Let's play. There's no way to keep answering these questions without just showing you how D&D works. So we played a little bit of AD&D. My first character was a magic user, because that's a class in that edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Everybody who uses magic is a magic-user. And it went horribly. I died. I was killed in a single hit by a giant rat before we even got to the dungeon. Of course, my uncle is a nice guy. He's like, "Well, we'll just act like that didn't happen. That's like an idea of what's going on in the game. But let's keep going so that you can see the thing." But remarkably, that experience did it for me. It set the hook like deep. I've been way into the hobby ever since. I haven't actually played that much because I tend to be the GM. There are people in my life who are down to play an RPG, but I am the person who gets most excited, and the person who's always like, oh, I heard about this new system, we gotta try this. And so it feels like it would be a little shitty of me to be like, hey, somebody else read these books and figure out how this game works, and then do all the work of running it. So usually I'm the one who does it. I don't think I've played in an RPG in at least a decade, maybe, and it's probably only been like a handful of times in total. But I've GM'd a ton. I have been a part of games of 4 different editions of D&D, Vampire the Masquerade, a couple different editions of Shadowrun, Deadlands Classic. Carnage Amongst the Stars, which is a really cool system. The first thing I ever GM'd shortly after I was introduced to D&D was the old West End Games Star Wars, like the D6 system, which I still think is a really cool system and I'd like to play again someday. I was very, very into Star Wars as a kid. I'm still very into Star Wars. And so that seemed like a natural union. It's a role-playing game, but also lightsabers and X-Wings. That game rules. Chase Combs asks, what does the name SB mean? Does it stand for something? This is another question that I got a whole bunch of, and that I've gotten a lot of over the years. And I'm going to say the same thing about this that I said about my face. There's a mystique here that I wouldn't want to spoil. But I've dropped clues, and you know what? Just for you, Chase Combs, I'm gonna drop another one right here. It does not stand for Sam Barlow. At this point, I've probably made it too obvious. Anybody who figures it out, of course, will receive the ownership of all of my mansions on the day of my death. So, keep searching, keep watching the skies. Sarah Campbell asks, what's your favorite color and why? I've probably made no secret of the fact that I really like orange. Orange is my favorite color. I would say a strong Nickelodeon orange. And that is probably the answer to why is Nickelodeon. When I was a kid, there was some real good cartoons on that there Nickelodeon. Also, I guess Clarissa explains it all. Cartoons and Clarissa, that was my childhood. Are you right or left-handed? I am very right-handed. I'm not even a tiny bit ambidextrous. I can do basically nothing with my left hand. There's honestly not that many things I can do with my right hand. I'm sort of clumsy, more than I'm right or left-handed, I guess. And finally, what is your general opinion on otters? Are they better than beavers? Here's a problem. I'm very ignorant about both of them. I do think otters are very cute, although I think I have a vague memory of being told that they have some kind of like terrifying reproductive behaviors. Otters might not be the chillest creature on the planet. Also, in defense of beavers, I have to say this. I am not aware of any good otter animated characters, but Nickelodeon did have that Angry Beavers show that was pretty 2 thumbs up. So, like, yeah, maybe beavers win. Maybe. Grinding the Gears of All Tides asks, how are you? My dude, it's 2020, and I'm just maintaining, you know? I think that's the best that can be asked of me. That's where I am. Phoenix Dracul, probably, asks, hey SB, you mentioned starting videos out of spite, and I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't curious. Yeah, this comment actually got an answer in the question video because I've told the story before, and other commenters knew it, but I don't mind telling it again. Basically, once upon a time, nearly 5 years ago, Darkest Dungeon was in early access, and the game had some serious class balance problems. The state of the game's design at that time was such that many of the classes were essentially unneeded. Like, you never really... There was not a lot of advantage to using, say, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the classes in the game. The Plague Doctor, the one with the plague mask, and stuff like that. It was pretty much... The dominant strategy was just smash to pieces the person in the front line of the enemy party, and there was no corpse system in the game at that time. You would smash up the dude in front of the enemy party, he would die, the enemy party would slide forward, and then you would smash up the dude who was in front again, and so on. And that was the right solution to almost every combat situation in the game, which really de-emphasized any class that was about ranged attacks, right? Basically, you're just like, every problem you would solve with like a Hellion and a Leper and a Highwayman with point-blank shot. And so the developers released an update, the Corpse and the Hound update, which contained the Corpse mechanic and also the Houndmaster class. And I had at the time never seen this happen before. I have seen it a couple of times since. The community lost their damn minds. The Steam forums were like in open revolt. There were people screaming about how Red Hook had ruined the game, and their arguments made no sense. It basically seemed to come down to, I was doing a thing before, and it allowed me to trivially conquer every challenge, and now it does not trivially conquer every challenge anymore, and I'm mad about that. I feel like you have personally attacked me by weakening the one strategy that I knew how to apply. And I got into some arguments with people on the internet, which is not a strategy that I broadly recommend for anything, really. And I found that I was making the same points again and again, to the point that I started copying and pasting portions of my posts. And first of all, there were a lot of people who just like did not seem to agree. They were just like, no, I don't think that is more effective. So I started doing my first Let's Play, my first Darkest Dungeon Let's Play, basically as a way of creating evidence for my arguments in the Steam forum for Darkest Dungeon about how now the game is better balanced and there's a variety of interesting strategies available and you can actually like use different team compositions. And basically I just wanted to shut up all those people who were stupid and wrong about Darkest Dungeon, because Red Hook basically very elegantly fixed a huge number of problems with the game. And I was right. And I think at this point, opinion is pretty much on my side, but holy crap, people went nuts. There's actually a pretty interesting, I think it's a GDC talk by the Darkest Dungeon devs about this period that you if this story is interesting to you, you might want to go check out. Aviel F0700 asks, how old are you and what was or still is your job outside YouTube? So I answered that first part already. The second part is nothing. Right now, I am putting my whole back into this thing. I'm trying to make it a sustainable career. Right now, it does not make enough money to sustain a full adult human man by itself. And I'm able to put the time and focus into it that I am due to, again, another instance of a friend of mine kind of saving my life, and now from a real bad situation, and now allowing me to live in his house rent-free. It turns out this does make enough money to support me if I don't have to pay rent. It's just once I have to pay rent, things are going to be less good. So I'm pushing on this, and that's part of the reason I'm so excited we hit 20K. I really love doing this, and I feel like I am having some kind of positive effect on the world, and I don't know that there's anything in the whole world that I'm as well suited to, I guess I would say, as this. And you might say, well, that's a very depressing thing to hear. Yeah, kinda. I don't know. In some ways, I'm not cut out for this society, but this is like a niche where I feel like I fit, and so I'm trying real hard on this thing. Tyler Fuok asks a bunch of questions. By the way, sorry if I mispronounced your name. That was a guess. What's your favorite non-SB subreddit? I do not use Reddit all that much. I do check our subreddit, this subreddit for this community, every day, but I don't know. I used to be more active on a number of other subreddits, but all of the subreddits that I liked have sort of gone to shit. Bad community moderation, people not willing to do the things that need to be done to keep a community usable for the people who actually want to use it. So none. Right now the answer is none. I am not doing a lot of Redditing. What puzzle games do you think have caught your attention for the longest or most profoundly with their narrative depth? That's an interesting question. I don't know that there are a lot of puzzle games where I think the narrative elements have been very significant. Some of the Zachtronics games have fun stories. The Opus Magnum story is pleasant. It's pretty light. It's pretty non-essential. You could absolutely just play the game without it. In my experience, most puzzle games that try to have stories, the story it feels very tacked on. I will say that the scarcity of narrative in The Witness is part of what I like about that game. Like, the space is so obviously constructed, like, even in an in-game, even in a diegetic sense, it's so obviously a constructed space, that I thought it was really interesting. Like, when you find the theater, and you watch the first movie clip, you're like, wow, what is the reason in-universe that somebody built this and hid these things here? Like, what were they trying to accomplish? And I did think that was pretty compelling. The mystery of that did help draw me in, alongside the fact that the gameplay of the puzzle gameplay of The Witness is just very excellent. I love that game, and it was really satisfying to get under the mountain eventually and start to hear some of the behind the scenes audio stuff about people talking about like our philosophy for building this very constructed space and like what are we doing here. So that one, The Witness, is the answer. Do you have any plants indoors with you? If so, which species is your favorite? The people I'm living with sometimes they grow plants. I do not have any plants. There are no plants that are my plants. I would kill a plant, I think. And also I don't know anything about plants. Which species of plant is my favorite? I like a good tree. Most trees you can't so much with the indoors. Smaller plants. A tulip. I like a tulip. People don't grow tulips indoors. The answer to your question is I don't know anything about plants. Blinskav asks, what is your favorite number? 7? That's sort of like it's probably like saying Shakespeare when people ask what your favorite playwright is. But it's got a nice shape. 7 is my answer. Aramunchi asks, if you could go back in time and witness any one event but not change it, what would you see? For me, it would have to be, my knowledge of history is somewhat insufficient to have a good answer to this question, but for me, it would have to be something that, like, nobody knows what happened. I would want to use this power to solve a mystery, to bring some piece of knowledge back to the world. Like, there are some interesting historical mysteries, right, about people who have disappeared. I think the Roanoke thing, at this point, we kind of understand what happened, but something like that, I think, where there's just, like, an enduring mystery about what happened, I would want to solve the mystery for people. I would not keep that information to myself. The Soviet Union of Hedgehogs, which is one of the better Soviet Unions, asks, do you think puns are a good joke, or do they just make you look old and be hated? I already look old and am hated, so it's hard for me to gather good data on this, but I think a pun, there's nothing wrong with a pun. Listen, you might argue that puns are low humor, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, but like low art, I think there's a lot of value to low humor. I am pro-pun, and I do think that there are good puns, and there are bad puns, and there are very, very bad puns. and that latter category is the best one. Very, very bad is the best, and then good, and then... If you're going to make a bad pun, you should either not say it at all, or take the effort to fix it and make it a good joke, or put in the extra effort to make it the worst joke you possibly can. Big fan of that. Soviet Union of Hedgehogs also asks, do you think the internet has had an impact on normalizing negative things, for example, depression or bipolar disorder, or do you believe the change in culture is the true suspect? I think that the change in culture and the rise of the internet are inseparable. I don't think that you can treat those things as though they are different, so I would have a hard time answering the second part of this question. As for has culture and the internet, has our changing social mores sort of had an impact on normalizing depression and bipolar disorder? I hope so. I think that I still think there's a pretty strong stigma associated with admitting that you suffer from mental illness or mental issues, and I would like very much if that were not the case, because this is shit that is not your fault, and you should not have to feel bad about it, and you should feel like you can be open with people and try to seek help about it, which obviously is a thing that happens less when there is a strong stigma attached. So, yeah, that's my complicated answer to that complicated question. Legal Frog asks, do you think garlic bread is a good substitute for the bread of a sandwich? That's no. Probably most sandwiches, no. There are probably sandwiches where this works just fine. If the filling part of your sandwich is very neutral flavored, then probably garlic bread would be a good punch-up. Like, I could see if you were having, like, some chicken breast, right? Some sliced chicken breast or something, you could probably do a thing with garlic bread that would work there. That sounds really good, actually. I'm super hungry. Thank you. Legal Frog also asks, what game would you say had the biggest effect in your life, like it has impacted who you are? Or it's just something that's left a strong message in your mind? I think that... I don't know that there's a game that has had an effect on me artistically that really impacted who I am, but there are definitely games that have had, like... It would be hard for me to say that Endless Legend didn't change my life, in the sense that Endless Legend is the thing that is responsible for me having an audience, largely. I mean, obviously not everybody who's watching is watching because they found me via Endless Legend, but a pretty large percentage of people are. And that... When I started doing Let's Plays, I did not have any intention of making money from them. Like I said, I was using it to argue on the internet. So it's just like, what a phenomenally stupid reason to do a Let's Play when I really think about it, when I lay it out like that. But, yeah, and the Endless Legend has had a big effect on, like, sort of opening my eyes to the idea that this is a thing that I could do as a job, maybe. Remains to be seen. But, yeah, that's a pretty big effect. Also, it doesn't hurt that Endless Legend is, like, a phenomenal game. Really, really excellent. Still, I might argue, the best game in that genre. Getter77 asks, what all dwells in the high pantheon of barbecue and the finery of grand eats outright? I do not have a very developed palate. I'm sort of like a 5-year-old would be embarrassed to have the palate that I have. So basically, you put some barbecued meat in front of me, and I'm going to enjoy it. I do not have a particular favorite thing. I will say, I am a little picky about barbecue sauce. I think most barbecue sauces are a little bit too sweet. And I really prefer, like, a more mustardy, kind of like North Carolina style barbecue sauce. So that's kind of an answer to that question. And in terms of grand eats in general, I am a huge sucker for Detroit style pizza. That's the thing. If you have never had Detroit style pizza, you have never had good pizza. Find a way to try it. It's a delight. Okay, moving on to something a little bit more serious and deep here. A couple of people asked some version of this question. I'm going to use Chris Horton's question. I know you've touched on this in the past, but what are your thoughts on parasocial relationships? I think it's a major reason for why the internet can be so addicting. I'm going to use that as sort of a stand-in for the several people who asked about the relationship between the YouTube person and the audience. I think it's a really strange thing. I am constantly paranoid that I will do something manipulative without realizing it, basically. I'm like, I really, really, really don't want to abuse the one-sided relationship that you as viewers have decided to sort of like bestow on me. And I'm not trying to say that like I think everybody who watches the channel is obsessed with me or thinks that I'm a role model or anything, because obviously I don't believe that. But there's a weird kind of thing that happens with. I was gonna say the word celebrity, and I backed off a little bit because I'm no celebrity, but you know what I mean. Like there's a weird kind of thing that happens with parasocial relationships, with one-sided relationships that we still as a culture need to do a lot of work to understand. I'm not going to try to reproduce any scholarship on this subject. There are some really, really good videos about this out there. In particular, I would recommend the Fake Friends series by Shannon Strucci Movies on YouTube. And there's a really, really good Lindsay Ellis video about this. The title is something like Authenticity and YouTube, something like that. It's a fascinating subject. My concern right now is I am trying not to abuse your trust. So hopefully I'm successful at that. I know that sometimes people on YouTube are real creepy and scummy, and I just want to not be a creep or a scum. Okay, now the pets questions. First of all, a bunch of people asked questions about my rats. I used to keep rats, and I've mentioned them on several videos, a couple recently. And so a lot of people have been like, hey, tell me more about that. That sounds dope. And you're right, it is. It is extremely dope. Rats are the best pets. Of all of the animals, rats are the best animal companions, in my opinion. Rats are a total delight. They're super friendly. Once they have, like, accepted you as a member of their family, which is obviously a thing that's really easy to do if you raise them from when they're very young, they are very trusting. They're very sweet. They just want to hang out with their bros. And if you are one of their bros, then they're happy to cuddle up with you and spend time with you. I'm a big fan of cage pets, personally, because I have, like I said before, some issues with depression and stuff, and there are some days where I just can't. It is very helpful to me to have a pet that I can sort of take care of on my schedule if my schedule gets weird. And dogs have more physical demands than that. I do like dogs a lot, but I have some problems having a dog. So a pet like a rat is a little bit more manageable for me. Rats still require a lot of attention and stuff, but it's a very different level of physical commitment. But they're wonderful, and they're so cute, and they're so sweet, and they're so smart. And I cannot say enough positive words about rats. I would still have rats if I could. Unfortunately, I developed an allergy. That is a thing that can happen sometimes. You can become allergic to an animal that you were not allergic to before you got it. And so, actually, you can hear it in some of the early videos on the channel. My respiratory system got pretty messed up because I didn't realize that I was allergic to them for a while, and I actually developed asthma, which is a thing that can happen, apparently. If you live in close proximity to an allergen for too long, you can develop asthma that then goes away if you manage to remove the... But, yeah, I actually... I got to a place where my health was kind of in danger. It was very unpleasant, and I had to carry around an inhaler for a while, which I'm sad about. I'm sad that I effectively cannot have rats anymore because I just think they're wonderful, delightful little creatures. I also got a lot of questions about the dog, so let's talk about the dog. Sometimes you will perceive a dog in the background of my recordings. Sometimes you will hear her, sometimes you will merely feel her presence bleeding through the screen. Her name is Tiffany. She's a pit bull mix, and she is just the absolute sweetest. I joke about her being an inconsiderate housemate on semi-frequently, but she doesn't know any better. She's really just like the sweetest dog. She's very energetic, which is exhausting. And she's not my dog. She's the dog of the people who are letting me live with them. So I am cohabiting with this dog, but she's a real sweetie. She is loud as hell, though. I tried to get some a bunch of people were like, hey, get me some video of that dog. And, well, here. Okay, great interview. Now, I have these release forms here. No, wait, I need you to sign this. So, yeah, sorry, everyone. I will instead substitute this very brief clip from the music video for Source by Fever the Ghost, which has strong Tiffany energy. March Against Hope asks, how do you navigate the distinction between appraising an artistic work and judging the character of the creator? When a creator turns out to be a terrible person, do you try to judge the artistic product individually, or are the work and its creator combined in a way that ruins them both? Are there any examples of great games that have been ruined for you when their developer went morally wrong, or conversely, games that you see in a new light when you learn something admirable about their creator? I think that this is a question that a lot of people have these days. You know, the magic of the internet and the changing nature of the parasocial relationship between author and reader is such that we know a lot more about our creators than we used to, and it turns out creators are people, and a lot of people are garbage. So here's my feeling on that. I think there's like a couple of things to keep in mind with this. First of all, I do not necessarily believe that a person who is terrible, I don't think that you have to refuse to engage with the work of people who are terrible. The most important thing for you about a piece of art or media, if you want to get touchy about the definition of art, is what it means to you, right? And a thing can be meaningful to you even if it was created by a person who is garbage or who might believe that you should not exist anymore. And I would not tell anybody that they shouldn't like a piece of media because of its creator, or that they have to disengage from it because of its creator. That said, there are an awful lot of creators out there who are not terrible monster people who want to make the world a worse place. And if you are going to engage with a piece of media, there's so many decent people out there making stuff that you would never be able to consume it all, even if that was the only thing you tried to do for your whole life. So if you're about to sit down and take in a piece of media by a person who you know to be a real garbage human, like maybe just consider spending that time on media produced by somebody better. It is probably not the case that bad people make the best media in the world, right? So just, lean out and try something else instead. Also, I do think you have a moral responsibility not to give money to people who are going to use that money to do evil in the world. So, if that's a concern for you, like, okay. I'm not saying that piracy is the answer, but I am saying avoid giving money to bad people who are going to use that money to do bad things. And sometimes that's going to mean acquiring the thing in some other way, perhaps perfectly legally borrowing it from a friend of yours who paid for it before they knew, or just not engaging with it at all and buying something else. Yeah, I think that's sort of in terms of the logistics of engaging with media. I think watching where your money's going is sort of a good lodestar. And then, do I have any examples of great games that have been ruined by my understanding of their developer? I think probably not. There is the Chris Avellone thing. Chris Avellone used to be kind of a personal hero of mine. I used to always say that I was trying to have Chris Avellone's job when I grow up, and he has been revealed to be a pretty gross and have probably harmed some people out of the industry, and that really sucks. And I would definitely not buy a game that had Chris Avellone working on it at this point. So that's a bummer. But at the same time, I still love Fallout, and I will never stop loving Fallout, and I don't think that you have to disengage from it. I guess there is, the question of, like, if you're a person who creates content on the internet, should you draw positive attention to a thing that has been worked on by a person who is bad, which is a more complicated question. I think that it's fine, as long as you're not, like, advising people to break any of the other stuff I said. So as long as you're not like, hey, ignore what this person did and the impact that they have on the world so that you can like the thing. Because, we should not deny things the meaning that they have. We should not rob things of their power. Or rather, you can't. So we shouldn't pretend that we can. That answer got real complicated and weird. Cormac Kellen asks, I was wondering what types of music you've been listening to lately. And also, would you be interested in playing Sunless Seas on the channel? I played both Skies and Seas, and I personally preferred the aesthetic and feel of sailing the Untersee as opposed to flying around in space, but of course that's just personal opinion. I'm going to answer these in reverse order. I will probably not play Sunless Seas on the channel. First of all, my impression is that Alexis Kennedy was very heavily involved in Sunless Seas, and I don't think he worked on Skies at all, right? I think he was gone from Failbetter to Found Weather Factory by the time that happened. But I don't necessarily want to, I do have a little bit of trouble engaging with the thing given what he did. And secondly, I have tried Sunless Seas and bounced off of it 3 separate times, twice a couple years apart before I ever played Sunless Skies, and then once after I played Sunless Skies on the channel. I was like, that was so much fun that I would like to go back and do the other thing. And it turns out I still I don't even know exactly what it is I don't like about Sunless Seas. It feels bad to play in a way that I have trouble putting into words. I think it has to do a lot with the speed of the travel and the combat systems. I don't know why that stuff didn't bother me as much in Skies. I mean, obviously Skies has a very different, sort of more action-oriented combat, which is nice. But probably not on the Sunless Seas, so sorry about that. And what types of music I've been listening to lately. So I listen to a lot of rap and metal, and not really any rap metal. I don't... so the union of those two things just doesn't work for me. But, so I've been listening to a lot of Aesop Rock lately. I've actually been listening to a lot of Death Clock, like a lot of Brendan Small. I know that Death Clock is a joke band and they make joke metal music, but it's also actually good metal music. And, his solo thing, Galacticon, also is quite good. I also stumbled across this band recently. Hold on, I'm going to look up their name. I think they're called Eternal Storm, or maybe the name of the album is Eternal Storm. The tags on these MP3s are not particularly... Okay, the album is called Come the Tide. The artist is called Eternal Storm. They're a Spanish metal band, and their stuff is... I really enjoyed this album. I've been having a good time with it. Also, Ghost. I listen to Ghost pretty frequently. Tom Waits. Oh, Brownbird. Brownbird has been on heavy rotation these last couple of weeks. Brownbird is good music for when I am sad, and I have been sad. So, in particular, well, this is getting long enough already. But yeah, that's the stuff. I have a problem with music where I don't know enough about music to know how to find more stuff that is like the things that I like. I'm too ignorant about music to know what the right words are. So I listen to the same albums over and over and over again. And I've been trying really hard to expand the last couple of years, which is like how I found Brownbird in the first place. But it's tough because I don't know, because I'm ignorant. Being ignorant is hard, it turns out. Not an ideal state. Chupacabra Food asks, what have been some of your favorite narrative devices in game design? So I think this is actually a real problem that the games industry has, where people feel like the game design and the narrative part are separate. If you play AAA console games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I find this incredibly frustrating. Like, there are an awful lot of very, very popular games that people claim to really be into because of the story, where if you took the story out completely, it would change nothing about the gameplay, and if you took the gameplay out completely, it would change nothing about the story. And first of all, it sucks that exists, and secondly, it sucks that that's incredibly dominant in the industry, just in terms of, like, by volume of sales. So I really appreciate it when a game tries to actually do something with that, where it tries to make a union of its mechanics and its narrative. I think, for my money, one of the most successful games at that ever, and also this is quite a recent thing, is a game called Signs of the Sojourner. I think that the mechanics of that game are its narrative in a way that's incredibly satisfying. I cannot say enough positive things about it. Also, it's just a delight in every other way. Go check out Signs of the Sojourner. If you bought the Black Lives Matter bundle on itch, you already have it. It's in that bundle, so go check it out. It totally rules. What are some of the things you are most excited about for games in the future? In the future, I would love to see better AI. Obviously, I like to play a lot of complicated games. I like to play a lot of games with a lot of systems. Like Endless Space 2 is a great example of this. Endless Space 2 has so many systems, and it has so many cool mechanics. And it's just an absolute bummer to play in single player, because the AI cannot engage with any of it. It cannot defend itself from attack on, like, any front, and it certainly can't, like, respond to an attack on one front with an attack on another front. It can't be like, well, he's going to come after me with his military, and his military is superior, but I'm going to, institute information warfare or some kind of economic strategy to help counter that. Or so I'm hoping that as time goes on, we're going to get better and better at creating AI that is not harder, but that is better at engaging with complex systems. I think that's like the biggest strength that computer games have over games like board games you can play in a physical space, is that you can have a much more complicated rules system with a much more complicated kind of AI opponent. And that's, boy, I hope we get there. I understand that it is both time consuming and expensive to develop good AI, and that it's a thing most players don't actually need, because most players don't get good enough at the games to need an opponent that can really engage on that level. But still I hope. What are your favorite books and movies? Hey, that's a big question. It's not an unreasonable thing for you to ask, but the way I engage with media makes it a big question. I have a large and ever-shifting pool. To keep it kind of short, I would say like a couple of my favorite movies are The Big Lebowski. I'm a huge fan of The Big Lebowski. I think it's one of the Coen brothers' better movies, which is really saying something, because the Coen brothers consistently knock it out of the park. Well, okay, they've made some they've made some errors, but by and large, there's a lot of good stuff in that particular catalog. I really like The Big Lebowski. Almost resists being understood, from sort of like a close reading kind of perspective. It's a difficult movie. It feels like it is fighting you, and I really like that about it. There's a couple of Coen brothers movies that do that. I think A Serious Man, to some extent. Inside Llewyn Davis is challenging in some of the same ways. Also, really a delightful movie. And yeah, I like that aspect of Lebowski. I like that you can, after watching the movie, you can kind of have this sense of like, why did any of that happen? Why was that story told that way? It's just it's a lot of fun to spend time figuring out movies like that. And other favorite stuff, Mad Max Fury Road is just incredible. It's phenomenal. It's the perfect action movie. I would love to see more things like it, which my understanding is we very well may. I'm excited about that. Thor Ragnarok is the best Marvel movie. I'll fight for that. And I actually like the Marvel movies more than I think a lot of people do. Not to say that they're unpopular or anything, but I think a lot of people are sort of the opinion that, like, well, those are fine, but they're like pablum for the common people. They're not like film. And I would argue that Thor Ragnarok is just a great movie all the way around. Also, you asked about books. My favorite books, like definitely Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy would have to be up there. The 5 books in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy. I know that there was a 6th one that I have not read that's not 100% Douglas Adams. I don't know exactly what the deal with that is, but I haven't read it, so I can't comment on it. But the core 5 books really, like, I read those at a point in my life when I was really forming my tastes still, and they were hugely impactful on me, hugely. Also, in the same way, Dragonlance, the Dragonlance Chronicles, I love me some pulp fantasy, and Dragonlance is just like it for me, man. It got its hooks in at the right time, and I will just love it forever, regardless of the fact that it might not be like high literature. Yeah, I've read dozens of Dragonlance books, and I just love that setting to pieces. Also, there's a book by, hold on, I just blanked on the author, and it's embarrassing, so I'm gonna, Delaney, yes. There's a book by Samuel Delaney called Dahlgren, that I think is just phenomenal. It's difficult, but it's really, I think it's a rewarding experience, and I read it in high school, and I just, like, it absolutely blew my mind. It showed me that so many of the things that I had assumed were true about books were choices that we make. There's some real, like, experimentation with form in that book that kind of, like, opened my mind at an important moment. And so I guess that's maybe more of a thing that's true about me than a thing that's true about the book, that it's sort of, like, mind-blowing. But I would recommend it to anybody. I would recommend it to anybody, but I'm not saying that I think you'll like it or finish it. But I think people should, like, experience... I think people should get to have a look at the thing that it is. Yeah. Chupacabra also asks, what's been your favorite manicure, and how would you like to paint your nails in the future? So I like the thing I did at Christmas time. I think I have some pictures, and if I do, they will be on the screen right now. I just think this is a nice combination of Christmassy colors. I think my hands looked good at this time. I started painting my nails a few years ago, and I really, really like the way in which it allows me to be expressive with my appearance. That is a thing that I have not cared about very much for most of my life. I've been a real, just like, let's spend as little time on how I look as possible because I have other things that I am doing and I do not care. But I don't know, for some reason a few years ago I started feeling like I wanted to try a little bit more, like I wanted to express myself a little bit more in my appearance, and nail painting has been a really good way to do that, in the sense that it does not take a lot of time to paint your nails. It's a pretty quick project, and you can trivially, if you change your mind or you do not like a thing you did, you can trivially just remove it and try again with something else. I can change it all the time, but it never takes a ton of effort to change. Way better than, like, dyeing my hair in that way, because I am a capricious creature sometimes. So this is what I'm wearing right now, and I think I'm going to try doing more complicated stuff like this in the future. I've been just solid color nails up till now, but I am now enjoying trying to put a little bit of artistry into it. Yeah. Do you think you'll ever pick up the Endless games again? Maybe. Maybe is the answer to that question. I think Endless Space 2 has a core problem where it's just not fun to play in single player, because, like, it's fun to play in single player as an optimization exercise, but less as a game because the AI just cannot compete. If I had a couple of people, if I had, like, a gaming group of, like, let's say 3 or 4 people, and we could play Endless Space 2 together, I bet that game rules in multiplayer. I just don't know very many people who have first of all, the love for 4Xs that I do, and secondly, the amount of time and patience required to play through a full multiplayer 4X game. And Endless Legend, I mentioned this in a video recently, I think it was a Dead Cells episode. I would like to go back to Endless Legend and try again to get some victories on Endless with the community patch. This is a feat that I never accomplished. I have heard that it might be impossible, that the balance is so tight, the enemies are so difficult, that it is probably the case that many, if not most, games of ELCP on Endless are unwinnable. But I still would like to try. I just want to go back and play the game again. I do miss Endless Legend. I've been trying to think of a good way to reintroduce it, an interesting thing that we could do with it. I'm not promising anything. Please don't get sad if it doesn't happen, but it might. Game Penguin asks, what's your favorite genre of music, and what are your favorite songs? I guess I sort of talked about this a little bit already. If I had to pick one genre, I would probably say metal, but it's somewhere between, like, metal. I listen to a lot of metal and a lot of rap. My favorite songs, I suppose, of the bands that I already mentioned, my favorite Aesop Rock song is probably, like, King of World Peace is very good. Mystery Fish. It's probably Mystery Fish. Or something off that album. I think The Impossible Kid is just, like, incredible, front to back. I'm looking over at the track list here. Rabies is great. Supercell is really fantastic. I love Tough with 2 Fs. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on that album. And also Skeleton. Jeez, I am now scrolling over my Winamp playlist, because I still listen to music on Winamp. Yeah, Skeleton has a lot of great stuff. Go for Guts is great. Tetra's great. Jeez. Aesop Rock's done a lot of... There's a reason that I've been listening to Aesop Rock for as long as I have. He just keeps putting out incredible work. Yeah, wow. Okay, I would say if I'm picking one, I'll say Mystery Fish for right now. What else did I say? I said Death Clock. For Death Clock, it's probably like Fan Song. Fan Song's real good. Thunder Horse is great. They picked Thunder Horse for that Guitar Hero game for a good reason. But there's a lot of other good stuff. Death Harmonic is fun. It's joke metal music, but it's still good, damn it. For Ghost, it's probably like Square Hammer or Rats. I said Tom Waits. I really like Underground and Black Wings. Black Wings is very, very good. Hell Broke Loose. I was very surprised when they played part of Hell Broke Loose during an episode of that Netflix Punisher show. I was like, this feels a little disrespectful, especially given that the themes of the show really don't line up with the point being made here. But that's a good ass song that's about some real stuff. I'm trying to think who else. Brown Bird would probably be like, Pale and Paralyzed, maybe? Or Bilgewater is very good. Bow for Blade. I'm just naming songs that I like. I'm not good at I'm not good at this. This is the reason that maybe I should have prepped a little bit. Yeah, and for that Eternal Storm album that I mentioned, it's Through the Wall of Light Part 2. No question. That time I kept myself to one. Game and Penguin also asks, I know you enjoy strategy games or are just really good at faking interest. Boy, I'd have to be really good. And you have played Into the Breach before, so would you ever play FTL? I know it's a different style of strategy game, but that's what makes me want to see you play it. Yo, I have played so much FTL. I'm going to pull up Steam real quick. I don't know when the last time I played it was, because, I mean, as you might imagine, it was a very long time ago on account of the game is quite old. Apparently the last time I played FTL was January of 2016. But I do have well over 200 hours. That game is excellent. If you are not familiar with the game that this person is talking about, check it out. It totally rules, and it is absolutely worth spending 200 hours on. I think I 100%ed it, and then cleared my file, and then 100%ed it again. And then finally, Game and Penguin asks, how are you? Are you holding out? Is there anything that is stressing you out at the moment? Yeah, you know, the world, the whole everything. Carl Kotzeper asks, name an album or artist, a book or author, and a movie or movie person that you like. Okay, I'm going to try to avoid saying anything that I already said. An album or artist that I like that I didn't already mention. Okay, this is going to kind of be in... I'm going to have some of the same reservations saying this that I had about the Death Clock, but MC Frontalot makes legitimately good music. Some of it's jokes, but also a lot of it's legitimately good. I like MC Frontalot's work, and I've seen him in concert like 3 times, and it's always a great show. The Proto-Men. Also the Proto-Men. The second Proto-Men album is so good. Also the first one. Yeah, that's a pretty good band. A book or author, you know, I have very strong feelings about a lot of Neil Gaiman's work. In particular, I would say American Gods. American Gods is a phenomenal novel. I would recommend that to anyone. If you're not in the market for a whole ass novel, there's one particular story that I like and that I always think of as sort of like emblematic of his style. And I'm gonna try to look up what it's called now because I don't remember. It's part of a short story collection. It looks like the story is called The Price. It's a short story about a black cat. And I think it's wonderful. It's lovely. It's really short. It will probably take you like a minute or 2 to read it. I would recommend that very strongly. And a movie or movie person that you like. You know who I like a lot is Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson has done a lot of really, really great work. I've been talking to my mom about movies a lot. This is a thing we're doing over quarantine since it's a thing we can do without having to be physically together. It's like we watch a movie each week and then talk about it, and I'm trying to teach her a little bit more about like close reading and media literacy type stuff. And we did Brick and Looper the last couple of weeks, and I think both of those movies really hold up. They're super good. Also, Rian Johnson directed all of the best episodes of Breaking Bad. So he is excellent. All of his work is excellent. That's right. I'm standing by it. All of his work is best in class. All right. Callie Ray asks, favorite video game of all time? That's a tough one. I have played many, many video games, but I understand recency bias is a thing, and as such, I am somewhat reluctant to say an answer that is this recent, but it might be Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is really something. Also, obviously, as long as we're talking about games from last year, Disco Elysium would be really high up on my list. When I did finally get a hold of Super Mario World, it did really blow me away, so that might be up there. Yeah, there's a lot of good video games, but I think Outer Wilds has a real shot at best video game of all time. I do. Favorite movie /show /cartoon /anime. All right, I'm gonna think of another movie that would be on my list of favorite movies that I've not yet mentioned. I really enjoyed Hell or High Water. Hell or High Water is a strong film. That might be up there. Favorite show is gonna be Hannibal, far and away. Hannibal is just a wonderful delight. It starts out pretending that it's going to be a police procedural, but it's of a higher quality than many police procedurals. But it does this thing. I would hesitate to spoil it because I really think people should get to experience the wonder of that thing as close to surprised as they can possibly be. But a lot of police procedurals kind of elevate the idea of a serial killer to a place where I'm actually very uncomfortable with it. I think that we do a lot of like weird serial killer worship almost in our society, and I think it gets really gross and shitty. Like, a lot of people could name, probably, if you gave them a couple of minutes to think about it, half a dozen serial killers, but probably most people could not name even a single victim, or maybe not like more than one or two, which I think is sort of emblematic of the problem that I think we have with this stuff. But Hannibal fixes the problem not by lowering the level of its regard for serial killers, but actually by going the other direction and sort of being about murder wizards in a way that's like kind of weird and fascinating. It heightens the unreality to a point where it is unreality rather than something that is trying to masquerade as reality. And that, I guess, sort of fixes the uncanny issue with the thing for me. And also, it's just incredibly well made. It's super clever. Yeah, it rules. It's the best thing. I will say, though, if you're going to try to watch Hannibal based on my recommendation, you should know it is the goriest thing that has ever been on network television. I kind of can't believe they got away with a bunch of the stuff they got away with. If you're squeamish about that kind of stuff, you maybe will not be able to get through this show, because it goes some wild places with the gore. Favorite cartoon? There are a lot of good cartoons. It might be Bob's Burgers. If it's not Bob's Burgers is definitely up there. I do like the BoJack Horseman. That's a good horseman. But I would hesitate to say, if this question was what cartoon do you think is the best, I might say BoJack Horseman. Favorite, I don't know. I can't watch it anymore. I'm like 2 seasons behind, and I just don't know if I can do it because it's so good at the thing it's doing, and emotionally I can't handle it. That cartoon makes me cry a lot. It makes me so sad. And then favorite anime is gonna be Fooly Cooly or Cowboy Bebop. Probably they're both real good. That's a tough choice. It's probably Fooly Cooly because that anime had like an actual profound effect on my life, which is a thing I've talked about before. But Cowboy Bebop is very good. Reading any good books at the moment? Yeah, kind of. I don't know if this is what you were thinking when you asked this question, but right now I am reading The Immortal Hulk. I love comics, but I do not usually read them as monthlies. I usually wait for runs to finish and then read like the trade paperback. But Immortal Hulk, I got a bunch of recommendations about Immortal Hulk from various quarters, including a very compelling episode of Scaredy Cats about it. And I just think it's excellent. It's one of the best things in the medium in a long time, and I'm keeping up with that every month. It's extraordinary. It's a horror based take on the Hulk, which is not an original idea. That's a thing that's been done before because, of course, the Hulk is pretty monstrous. But it takes it to some really fascinating places. If you're curious about it, I would if your interest is piqued even a little bit, I would recommend looking into it and trying to find out if it's a thing for you, because it's really, really excellent. Out of all the games you've played on the channel, do you have a favorite series? And are there any you wish you could redo? To answer the latter half of this first, yeah, I think that I would like to redo a lot of the early stuff. In particular, I'm a little embarrassed that some of that Endless Legend stuff feels so early and yet has so many views. Because I just... first of all, like I was saying earlier, I had some long-standing respiratory issues that were going untreated for a lot of the early stuff, and you can hear that, and it sounds bad. And also, I was not good at managing my equipment, and it sounds bad. But also, beyond the technical stuff, I don't like my performance style in those older episodes. I'm a lot slower. It's lethargic in a way that really bothers me, and I would like to redo that in a style closer to what I do now. Is there any chance we'll ever see you play Metroidvanias on the channel? Yeah, this again, a very kind compliment attached to this question. Yeah, I like Metroidvanias. I don't have a problem with Metroidvanias. I think we have done some. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I'm hard pressed to. I must have. Jedi Fallen Order. Jedi Fallen Order is a Metroidvania, and it's kind of a light Metroidvania, but I enjoyed that. And we totally played Headlander back when Headlander came out. I guess I haven't really done that many. I like Metroidvanias though. I enjoy them a great deal. If a good compelling one came out, I would absolutely play it on the channel. If I was aware of it. I'm trying to reword that now so that it doesn't sound like I'm insulting whatever your favorite Metroidvania is. And before you ask, no, Hollow Knight's not going to happen. I did not like Hollow Knight. I bounced off Hollow Knight pretty bad. Finally, Kelly Ray asks, if you were to live in the world of Cud, would you be a Truekin or a mutant? Which cybernetics or mutations would you have? I mean, I'm a mutant through and through. First of all, the Truekin, I guess it's not all Truekin, but the Putus Templar are very obviously ethnocentric fascists, and so I can't be associating with that. Being a Truekin, I guess, does not make you a Putus Templar, but honestly, I'm a mutant through and through. Toxie me up, man. What mutations would I want? Like, I don't know what mutations I would have. If we're being honest, most of my mutations would be negative. But if I got to choose, I gotta imagine having 4 arms is just gonna be broadly useful, right? That would be a real good one. Light manipulation. I would have light manipulation. I would be Shiraka Dulak all day, man. Genbo Kakuzu asks, if you could make a video game, what kind would you make? I have made video games. They're mostly pretty bad. A friend and I worked on a thing for quite a while, like a sort of like an FTL style roguelite, but where the conflict resolution in nodes was a tactical combat game, sort of in the style of like a Shining Force or something like that. And basically the whole game got designed, and then we had some of the basic systems implemented, and I still kind of wish that we could finish that. I mean, obviously, we're all very busy. The problem with doing things in the world is everybody's very busy, but I think that there are some really, really good ideas in that game that I would still like to bring to fruition. So that's my answer. Or I would love to work on a 4X. I would love to be part of a team making a 4X. I think that would be just fascinating work. Would you ever return to Thea 2 or do Thea 1? I might. I wanna explore. I know that Thea 2 got a couple of big updates after we stopped the series, but my impression is that they were never. It was never rebuilt in the way that I would really like, where like it actually makes use of the full scaling of the systems that they created. But But still, I would like to go back and check it out. It is on the list. I have a big list of projects to plug in when there are holes in the schedule, and Thea 2 is on it. That does not necessarily guarantee it'll happen, but it's on it. What superpower would you want and why? Teleportation's a pretty good one. It's going to be hard to beat teleportation for pure utility. I think, though, that's kind of a boring answer. Yeah, I would like to be able to teleport anywhere at any time is the boring answer. I think I would go heat vision. I think heat vision's a real cool one. There are so many characters in the comics who use heat vision to just do things that are other powers. You could just come up with so many dumb explanations for why heat vision allows you to fly, or, I think you could get creative. That's what I would want. I would want a superpower you could get creative with, and I think heat vision's a good one for that. And finally, Genbo Kukuzu asks, if you could go back in time and become your kid self again, living your same life but with all the knowledge you have now, would you? Yeah, absolutely. This seems like a very easy question to me. Can you imagine the level of resource loop I could set up if I went back with all the knowledge I have now? The numbers. Think of how high the numbers would go. Jonas Polgar asks, can you list some books you like or that had a big influence on you? Can be fiction or non-fiction. I've already talked about some. In terms of non-fiction, I mostly read non-fiction these days. I haven't read a novel, like a fiction novel, in quite a long time, and that's a problem I should probably fix. And I have a list of those too, and it's growing, but nothing ever comes off of it, so that makes it tricky. But in terms of non-fiction, I really liked the two books about string theory that Brian Greene wrote, which I don't know, that must have been close to 2 decades ago at this point. But The Elegant Universe and I can't remember the other one, the name of the other one. But I thought those were very effective for teaching some of the basic ideas of string theory to a layman, which I extremely am. I do not know stuff about physics. So yeah, I'd recommend those. Those are real cool. In terms of books that have had a big influence on me, I mean, obviously I am way into a certain style of horror. It would be hard to say that the writings of Howard Phillips Lovecraft did not have a big influence on me. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend them to people now. I would want to get to know you and get to know your tastes before doing that, because first of all, they are just dripping with horrible racism. H.P. Lovecraft is a great example of an author who, once you understand his deal, it does become kind of inseparable from the work, because you can't help but see that the horrific other he's talking about is mostly like people who aren't white. But there still are some good stories. Also, they're very slow and weird, and they're kind of like some of them are so boring they're hard to get through now. So that's also a reason that I would want to. I'd be wary of what recommendations I make about him. But yeah, his fiction definitely had a big influence on me. And by the way, I'm just gonna head it off right now. Literally every single time I have ever mentioned that H.P. Lovecraft is horrifically racist, somebody posts in the comments arguing with me about how, well, no, he's just, that's just what it was like at the time. Everybody was like that, or no, he wasn't. I actually had a guy in one of the Sunless Skies episodes, Paul. He wasn't racist. He was just paranoid on me, and that's a level of ignorance that you should be embarrassed to display in public. Don't be that guy. Go look up some of his poetry. Go look up any of the things that his contemporaries wrote about his level of racism. It is not the case that people just in general have always been really racist and we just pulled out of it recently. People have always known that racism was wrong. People have always known that slavery was wrong. There have always been people fighting these things. Do not erase those people from history with your shallow understanding of things. Sorry, I get a little heated about that particular subject. Anna Phillips asks, I know you prefer evil or monstrous people in games and stuff. Do you have a favorite bad guy from a game or movie or TV show, like Skaven or vampires or Cthulhu stuff? This question, actually, when I first read it, I was like, I prefer evil or monstrous people. Are you sure? And then I thought about it for a second, and I was like, oh, okay, I see where she's coming from. Yeah, I do like the Skaven a lot. I think the Skaven are very they're a fun kind of evil. I think that's a big thing for me. Some evil is fun and some evil is not. And even though the Skaven are mass murderers who are constantly committing terrifying war crimes, they do it in a goofy way that you could absolutely dial into and make it horrifying instead. But like the mad scientist sort of arc that they're on is pretty enjoyable. There are other things in the Warhammer universe, the other kinds of evil right there next to them that I do not like and do not get to have fun with. I think in terms of quote-unquote bad guys, Hannibal from that Hannibal TV show is actually a delight. A true villain, evil through and through, and just absolutely a great time to hang out with, and also kind of intensely, scarily attractive. I'm trying to think of any others. Like there are definitely good villains and things, but at the moment I'm a little stymied for examples. I do like a good mad scientist trope, so I've always enjoyed that. Woodland Squirrels asks, across all forms of media, which fictional story has been most influential to you as a person? This is a dumb answer. Like, I'm about to... I can hear it coming out of my mouth, and I'm already a little embarrassed. But honestly, it might be Fooly Cooly. Like, I don't want to be the guy who's like, anime changed my life, because I have a lot of complicated feelings about anime and anime fandom. But I told this story before, but I will tell a brief version of it again here. At the time that I watched Fooly Cooly, and by the way, this is how it's always going to be, right? It's always going to be like, it's a thing about where you were in your life and who you were in your life, not just a thing about the art. You can never view a piece of art neutrally or objectively. The only way you can see is through the lens of your existence. And so any experience you have with art is with a piece of art or media is always going to be half the thing and half you. Right, and so this influential experience was at least half me, but I was really unhappy with who I was in my life. I had become a person that I did not like, basically through not exerting effort to be anything in particular. It turns out if you are not thoughtful and controlled, you just kind of become something, and it may not be something that you are into. And Fooly Cooly came along at just the right moment, and there's an episode of that where they're putting on a school play that's based on Puss in Boots, and one of the girls in the play sort of becomes obsessed with the play, and particularly with the role of Puss in Boots, because it is a story about a person who, in her words, transcends their mask. They want to be a different person, and so they just start acting like that person, and then they find one day that they are. They put on a mask, but then they transcended it and became the thing. And at the time, that idea just blew my mind. I was like, you could do that? And so basically I did. Basically I figured out who is a person I would rather be, and I just started acting like I was that person. And then it turns out that you are what you do. So then I was. Woodland Squirrels also asks, what should I watch on Netflix right now? Into the Spider-Verse. How many video or series ideas do you discard weekly, and which idea are you too attached to and can't let go? The answer to the last part of this question is all of them. I have never discarded an idea. Like I said, I have a big list. There are a lot of things that I started and seem like they have stopped, but that I am just trying to find a good way to reintroduce. There are lots of things you guys never even learned of, things that never made it to the channel that I am still reworking in my head constantly. I have so many ideas, and hopefully you will get to see and enjoy some of them. And are there any genres, subgenres, or trends in video games that have gone extinct, but you would like to see revived? You know, the immersive sim kind of went extinct for a while, and then it came back. It came roaring back. And then I think it has gone extinct again. Because, I think Prey didn't sell very well, but that's the one, man. I really love that genre of game. I would love for there to be dozens of them released every year. I wish that we could completely do away with AAA third-person stealth action games with RPG elements and just replace all of those development resources over onto immersive sims. I think the world would be a better place for it. Simon asks, what's your least favorite type of game? I do not, I generally don't care for, like, realistic, well, honestly, realistic anything. Realism is a blot upon our industry. But realistic sports games, in particular, I don't really find very fun, which probably has something to do with me just not being into sports in real life, right? So I don't have that connection to help draw my interest out. Probably if I liked football or baseball better, I would like football or baseball games better. Christine McCullough asks, what games have most influenced you in your life? Not the ones that you think are best, but the ones that had the most impact on you. I think Final Fantasy VI had a pretty big impact on me, in that it got me... So I went through a real JRPG phase in, I don't know, like middle school. And Final Fantasy VI, this is going to sound like I'm dragging the entire JRPG genre, and that's only because I am. Most of them are written like total trash. There's a lot of thoughtless anime trope garbage in a lot of JRPGs, but Final Fantasy VI was the first game I played where I was like, oh, the writing in one of these can be like good and dense and complicated. And I know that probably sounds silly to an adult listening to this with developed tastes, because Final Fantasy VI is very tropey and melodramatic and silly in a lot of ways, but keep in mind, we're probably talking, I was probably like 10 or 11 when I played it, so it helped open my eyes beyond a lot of the JRPGs I had been playing at the time, which had writing that was less good, and also shoddy mechanical systems, and so between those two things, not a ton to recommend them in the modern day. Time is Endless asks, what is the favorite moment you had while playing a game? Could be something that happened to you, or just a moment in the story of the game. This is not a specific moment, but this is a thing I think about kind of a lot, actually. There was this game called Tribes Ascend, and it was a multiplayer game in the Tribes series, as you might imagine from the name, but it took it in kind of an interesting direction. So, like, the thing I want to talk about here is the sensation of speed in Tribes Ascend. That game did a better job than any other game I have ever played of instilling a sense of a visceral, actual, like, physical sensation. You could get going so fast in Tribes Ascend, and the game was built not only to encourage that level of speed, which is very unusual in what was basically a competitive first-person shooter, but also to like make you really feel it. That it got deep into the heart of me. I think about that all the time, especially since I played that game and I started listening to the Aesop Rock album Skeleton at the same time, and that sort of just like became the thing I always listened to while playing Tribes Ascend, and I played that game for hundreds and hundreds of hours, listening to that album the whole time. So whenever I hear any of the songs, it sort of brings back that prickle of going fast for me. It's so okay. I'm gonna actually talk about it a little bit. So the game is the mode that mostly I played was Capture the Flag, and there was some other stuff going on there with like base defense or whatnot, I think. But like the Capture the Flag is that game for me. And Tribes Ascend takes place over a much larger area than most competitive first-person shooter maps. There's like large outdoor areas, like, and everybody in Tribes Ascend is wearing a cool mech suit thing, like a powered armor that has a jetpack on it. And you have a button that just like turns off your friction with the ground, or dramatically lessens your friction with the ground, the ski button. So you could get on a hill and hit that button and ski down the hill and gain a bunch of momentum. And then if you employed your jetpack a little bit, you could skip the sliding along the ground uphill part of going up the next hill. You could just jetpack yourself up and then kill your jetpack such that you fall onto the downslope of the next hill and gain even more speed and momentum. And obviously there's a lot of parts of this that don't make actual physics sense, but in the game, it meant that as you learned the terrain of the different maps, you could work the terrain to your advantage to generate huge amounts of speed. And so the bases are a considerable distance apart, like a minute of full speed running from one base to another, or maybe more. But everybody's traveling around the map using the terrain and the jetpacks to generate all this speed, and so flag running in the game was a thing where, like, you, as the Pathfinder, the lightest class, the class that is best at flag running, would, like, circle around behind the enemy base, get yourself, like, a mile of run-up space, and utilize the terrain back there to zoom yourself up to 400 miles per hour, and then you would just skid across the top of their base, grab the flag, and fly toward your own base at 400 miles per hour. And, like, the interplay of the systems was so cool. People would obviously set up, like, static defenses and stuff on the near the flag stand, but also you would have enemy pathfinders whose job was pursuit and retrieving the flag, and so people would see you coming in, and even as you're on approach to the base, everybody's aware of you because they have spotters, right? Because this is the smart way to do this thing, so of course they're defending against it. And you would tell your team, like, I'm starting my run now, and you would have your heavy guys would show up with their mortars and their EMP grenades to try to clear the defenses off the flag stand, and you would come in just screaming, and as you got really fast, the music would kind of fall away a little bit, and it was just the whistling of the wind and the visual effects, and, like, I found myself actually, like, tensing up and crouching down crouching down in my physical room to not hit my head on things. Like, that's the degree of reality that it held for me. And I've never felt anything like that in another game. It's just phenomenal. In terms of a favorite moment in a story sense, I would have to say the ending of Braid definitely was like a whoa moment. But probably my favorite story moments in games might be from the new Wolfenstein games. There's some really, really good stuff in those. A Wolfenstein game did not necessarily have to have writing at all. Certainly not good writing. But I feel like both of those games have really good writing, and there are scenes in them. I'm thinking particularly, like, the death of BJ Blazkowicz and the cutscene that comes afterward, and also there's a scene in the second one where you're having a debate about political philosophy during a shootout while one of the members of the resistance group is playing, like, jazz clarinet, that I just thought was that's really, really good, really impressive stuff. I really like those modern Wolfenstein games. Matthias Perez asks, what's your favorite series on the channel and why? If it's a game with many campaigns, which one is your favorite? And what games are you looking forward to for the channel? You know, I think there was already a question about what is my favorite series, and I only answered the part about which series I was embarrassed about. So let's answer it this time. Some of my favorite stuff that we've done, I really, really, really like how the Sunless Skies series turned out. And that's only like 40% me and 60% the game. But I had a blast with that game, and it seems like a lot of people, I've heard that from other people, that's the one that really connected for them. That was just, it's a very slow-paced series, but I think the end result of the character building and the narrative and stuff is just phenomenal. And also, the Pyre series, similarly, I don't know if the Pyre series is as good to watch, because I have not tried to watch it, but the experience I had playing Pyre for the channel is something I remember, and I am so very in love with everything about Pyre. I was about to get a Pyre tattoo right before the quarantine, the endless quarantine, occurred, because here in America, we still haven't even bothered to try to get things under control. Not we. Some people in this country are not interested in getting things under control, and the rest of us are stuck indoors because of it. But I am hoping to get my first tattoo sometime in the near future, and it's definitely going to be the star map from Pyre that shows the location of all the rights, because it connected with me on a really deep level. And what game am I looking forward to for the channel? There are definitely games that I am looking forward to the full release of. I don't think that I have anything that I'm like... anything that's totally just still in development. I would have said Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 if I had answered this question last week, but the sudden and unceremonious firing of the game's director and lead writer all of a sudden makes me think that probably that game is going to have some serious problems. So I am cautiously pessimistic about it at this point. But there's some stuff that's in early access right now that I've played a little bit of that I'm super excited to see the final version of. I cannot wait for Hades. I think we're only like a couple of months away from Hades 1.0, and I'm like very, very excited for that. Noita, I really want to see what Noita is going to look like in its final form. I have intentionally not dug into it very much, and I'm like, the suspense is killing me. I really, really want it to come out so we can all learn about it together. Griftlands, I'm curious about what that's going to look like. These are all things that like are almost certainly going to appear on the channel. Yeah. Refinex asks, what is the process for determining what games go on the channel? I know in the past you've mentioned some games you won't play because it doesn't fit your style or just doesn't translate well to playthroughs. It's a complicated process that actually, and then there's another similar question from Nika Man is Dead. I actually got a couple of versions of this idea. I spend a lot of time figuring out what to play, and it's actually kind of complicated. Like, there are a lot of things I'm trying to do, you know, and one of those things is obviously show off games that I think people might have missed. Like, that's a concern. If there's something that I think didn't get enough attention, didn't get as much attention as it deserved, or that is new that I think people might skip over, I try to showcase those things. I try to make sure there's a balance of different types of games on the channel, so sometimes things get pulled up or pushed back because there's too many or too few of those kinds of series happening at the same time. I listen to a lot of video game podcasts. I follow a lot of video games media people on Twitter, both video games like press people and also developers and stuff. In particular, I find that following people in the indie game scene is a really good way of finding out about indie games. Of course, I read game press websites. It takes a fair amount of time. I spend a lot of time looking for new stuff, trying to find cool new stuff, and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a hardship or anything, but it's a big process and it involves a lot of considerations. In the past, I've mentioned some games that I wouldn't play because I didn't think they would fit the channel, and I'm reconsidering a lot of that kind of stuff in the wake of the Baba Is You series, which is like that's very much a game that I thought I would never play on the channel. I'm always open to reconsidering my process and my I guess my rules. But there's probably going to be more puzzle games in the future. I don't know exactly what yet, but people seemed to be into the thing, and I had a really good time with it. So. Dustin Shunta asks, I've become a huge board games. My dude, me too. My question is, have you played Twilight Imperium, and what did you think of it? And if you haven't played Twilight Imperium, what is the longest board game you've played and enjoyed? So I've played about half of a game of Twilight Imperium. The game I played, it was one person who had played before and liked it. It was his copy of the game. And then it was like 3 of us who had never played before. And I was into it. I like a big, complicated game with a lot of pieces, but the other 2 people were less into it, and we got like 2.5 hours into the experience, and people were kind of like, could we maybe do something else? And then we did something else. But I liked it. I was enjoying it. It was it's not the most recent edition of the game. It was the one before that. I thought it was really cool. And then I'm going to answer the second part of the question anyway, even though I have played Twilight Imperium. The longest board game I have played and enjoyed is probably Dominant Species. I bet a play of Dominant Species was the longest, because there are some people in my group. If you're not familiar with the game, you don't actually take that many total actions in a game of Dominant Species, but more than any other game I've ever played, it really induces analysis paralysis in people, because the planning phase of the game is so complicated. And I definitely had a game of Dominant Species run like almost 6 hours, I think, one time. It doesn't take that long to play, but it took that long for us that one time. And it rules. And I enjoyed it still, even though it was frustrating that other people were not always acting as quickly as I would have liked, because Dominant Species is a great game. Matt the 12th asks, are you going to revisit Endless Legend? Now that you have played Humankind's open dev, have you changed your opinion about the new combat? And do you think you are going to deep dive into Humankind? I want to take this moment to clarify a little bit my feelings about the Humankind combat, because I mentioned that I sure wish it was just Endless Legends combat again with a larger variety of units. But I want to clarify that, like, I saw some comments on the Open Dev series, and then there were some questions that were kind of like this about Humankind. I don't think that combat in Humankind is bad. The units are simpler than they are in Endless Legend, which is going to mean that you have fewer options for customizing your units to interact with various strategies. There's going to be a little bit less play and counterplay. It's going to be more like, instead of tricking out your units for different purposes, it's going to be more like, well, this is the horse unit and this is the anti-horse unit. And I don't think that that's a bad level of simplicity. It's simpler, and I think for a lot of people it's going to be a better level of simplicity, but I don't think it goes to a place where, like, it's too simple. I think it's fine. I think that the Humankind probably only has the second best combat that I've seen in a 4X. That's maybe a better way of putting it. I wish it was more like Endless Legend, but it still seems like it's pretty good, and I like it a lot better than, like, the Civ system. As for whether I'm going to deep dive into Humankind, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, without question. I'm very excited for it. I do not, in general, dig the realistic historical type setting for 4Xs as much as I like a fantasy or science fiction setting, but Humankind has enough really cool mechanical stuff going on that I can deal, man. And obviously, like, I don't dislike that stuff too much. I played a whole lot of Civilization on the channel, right? Waiting Idly asks, if you had to pick only one genre of game to play, what genre would it be? Probably we're talking puzzle game here, or it might be... This is gonna sound like a weird answer given what I like to play on the channel, the way I often represent things, but it's probably either puzzle games or first-person shooters. It probably wouldn't be like 4Xs. Puzzle games are a huge part of my life. Because of some of my attentional issues, I often find that I have a really hard time focusing on one thing. If I try to just pay attention to one thing, what I end up doing is paying attention to nothing at all. And puzzle games, I find, have just the right level of interactivity and demand for my attention that they allow me to focus on something else. So, like, I watch a lot of video essays, but some days I cannot pay attention to a video essay by itself. My mind will just wander off, and I'll realize 10 minutes in that I haven't heard anything that's been said. And so, like, it is very often the case that I am watching a video essay on one monitor while playing a puzzle game on the other monitor, because that's the way that I absorb them both the best, and losing that would suck a huge amount. So the answer is probably puzzle games, but also I play a lot of first-person shooters. Waiting Idly also asks, if you had to pick only one studio to play games from, what studio would it be? Well, if we're thinking, like, in terms of I want puzzle games to play, we're probably talking Zachtronics. Zachtronics makes a variety of different kinds of puzzle games that I really enjoy, and their stuff is always high quality. I say their stuff, it's mostly one guy, Zach, but he has other people that help with various aspects of the game. Yeah, it might be Zachtronics, or if not that, then we're probably looking at, like, Supergiant or Clay, for the fact that, first of all, their products are always super high quality, but secondly, they have a good variety. Right, Clay and Supergiant both release a lot of different kinds of games in different genres, and I think everything that both of those studios has released has been really, really good. Plus, if I pick Supergiant, I get to play Hades, and I'm super looking forward to that. Also, what is your favorite board game? And if you haven't played it on the channel, would you consider playing it on the channel? The answer to this question might be Dominant Species, actually. And I would consider playing it on the channel. I would just need some people to play it with. It's a pretty complicated game, and explaining it the first time is a pretty slow process. So it would be a commitment for me and the players and the viewers, but I would like to do it sometime. I think Dominant Species is a super, super cool game. Jesse Rogers asks, in sort of a roundabout way, if I like electro swing, and the answer is yeah, I do. You know, I don't listen to a lot of electro swing nowadays, but I used to, and I do like the genre quite a bit. I'm not a big fan of a lot of kinds of electronic music, which particularly in this area of the country is seen as sort of blasphemous. EDM is a very Detroit scene kind of thing, but electro swing totally works for me, and I have no idea why this is the repetitive sample-based music that I like and the other ones don't. I don't know, but I dig Caravan Palace. There's some real good Caravan Palace stuff. There's some Parasocial. Yeah, I like electro swing. Also, will you play Tricarion in your next board game sim? I've never heard of Tricarion before, but maybe. I've added it to the list. Congratulations, you got a thing to the list. El Felipe asks, you play a lot of strategy games, but you never touched the classic grand strategy games like Crusader Kings 2 or Distant Worlds. Why? Well, in the case of Distant Worlds, it's real simple. I had never heard of this game before I read your comment, so that's why. In terms of Crusader Kings 2, I have played some Crusader Kings 2. I have some... It does not grab my attention the way that other strategy games sometimes do, in part because the mechanical systems are not complicated but obfuscated. Like, the game doesn't really want you to understand. It doesn't make any effort to help you understand what's going on ever. And then on top of that, it has the very historical theme that I find phenomenally boring, just very not interested in that. And then on top of that, there's the issue of it being largely undirected. That's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to say that, like, games that don't give you an explicit goal are less good or anything, but it is a problem for me. I connect less well with games that don't have an explicit goal for me to try to optimize my way toward. And you obviously can just, like, pick a goal for yourself. But knowing that doesn't help it be more interesting to me. So I kind of just don't find Crusader Kings 2 very interesting, although I know that it's a game that a lot of people really deeply love, and I am not judging any of those people. Cool and good for them, and if you enjoy it, that's awesome, and I'm glad you have a thing you enjoy. But not so much my flavor. Good Enough Gamer 13 asks, how's quarantine been for you? To be perfectly honest with you, it hasn't really changed things for me all that much. Like I said before, I kind of have some social anxiety, and also I don't really like to go outside very much, especially during the day. I have a lot of allergy problems. I am absurdly pale, and I sunburn very, very quickly, like half an hour. And also, I don't bees. I have a deep and abiding fear of stinging insects, and basically a lot of factors all sort of came together to make me never develop a taste for doing stuff outdoors when I was a kid, and that has just continued on into my adult life. So I was already pretty much social distancing all the time. So yeah, quarantine has been fine for me, basically. The one big change is there is a chain of grocery stores in this part of the country. It might be a Michigan-specific thing, actually. I don't know. Called Meijer. That used to be 24-hour a day, 364 days a year. That's been their thing since, like, the 1930s. And that's very convenient for me because I have a very erratic sleep schedule. And it's really nice to be able to go shopping at 3 a.m. when there's nobody else around. I always found that to be a very pleasant experience. And they stopped doing that. For some reason. The quarantine made them close at night, and so now I have to go there like during the day when there are people around, and I like that less. That is less convenient for me. So that's a bummer. But I'm very lucky in that that's pretty much the worst part of quarantine for me. Good Enough Gamer 13 asks, do you know about the game Darkwood? It's a favorite of mine, and I was wondering your opinions on it. I do not know about the game Darkwood. I had not heard of this before. It looks really interesting. I have put it on my wish list. I'm going to buy it next time it's on sale and check it out. So thanks for the recommendation. Space Monkey Entertainment asks, if you could greenlight funding for a sequel to any one game, what would it be? Maybe not necessarily a sequel, but rather similar but better. Personally, I still wait for a new Dungeon Keeper game. Some attempts have been made, but none have really captured the essence of it, in my opinion. Yeah, that's a good example. Dungeon Keeper would definitely be one of the ones on my list. This is maybe going to get some people in the comments yelling at me, but my answer might be Fallout 2. I know that there are other games in that series that have been released more recently, but in sort of the same way as the games that are trying to be Dungeon Keeper, I feel that there's been a lot of things that have the Fallout name on them that don't feel like Fallout. In part, I think that the change to first-person shooter mechanics is completely non-workable, and I think the Outer Worlds is a great example of why that's the case. Because there's a thing that you break the link between the character's skills and the outcomes of things really badly when you move to this first-person shooter, more action-based combat style, because the player's skill is an overwhelmingly huge part of combat resolution then. That's going the wrong direction. I think that they should try to figure out a way to go the other direction, where the character's weaknesses have more of an effect. So, and I don't think that Fallout 3 or Fallout 4 count as Fallout games at all. They're Elder Scrolls games wearing a post-apocalyptic skin, and frankly, neither one of them is very good. New Vegas is better and closer, but I really do think the first-person combat just makes it not feel like the same thing at all, which is a real shame. And I know that there are other games that are closer to the genre, things like Pillars of Eternity and stuff that are trying to carry on the mantle of that particular kind of game. And those are certainly games that are in the same genre, but none of them feel like another Fallout to me, even though I do like several of those games. Or, you know what? Actually, I want to take back everything I just said. No, I don't. I still agree with all that, but I mean, it's not the correct answer anymore. Arcanum. I want a sequel to Arcanum that feels like a new Arcanum extended into the present. That's the one. NikkiBot asks, are you happy with your current success on YouTube, or would you want to have more views? And also, are you obsessed with your video analytics, or do you just let things be as they come? I do have to try not to look at the video analytics. I'm absolutely the kind of person who might obsess over a thing like that in a way that is detrimental, so I have to exercise quite a bit of willpower not to, spend hours digging around uselessly in the numbers. It's important to look, it's important to learn things from them, but it's tough for me to limit that in a healthy way. And, I mean, of course, I would like more views. Like I was saying earlier, I want this to be my real full-time job, and so that's probably going to require more views. So let's hope that happens. Secondly, NikkiBot asks, what font is that you use for your icon in the update videos? The font is called Requiem. There's a link to it on the YouTube, the About channel, the About page of the YouTube channel, but also there will be a link in the description of this video. I really like the way it looks sort of splattery, like the person writing with the quill was maybe in a hurry or just not very good at writing with a quill. I think there's an amateurishness to that's kind of delightful. So that's why I use it for everything. Also, I figured it would be nice to sort of have one thing that was the signature. As much as it makes me a little bit throw up in my mouth when I say this word, I think it's good branding to use the same font for everything, so. Also, NikkiBot asks, do you ever think you will continue or redo that one space Fallout game, Outer Worlds? As you might be able to guess from the answer to the previous question, I probably not. I do not like Outer Worlds. It's such a bummer, man, because the combat sucks so much. It's so easy and and tedious, and there's so much of it. It feels like a huge percentage of the time you're playing that game, you're just trying to get the stupid garbage combat out of the way so that you can get back to the parts that are interesting, and it's just too much for me. And it's a shame, because I actually do like the writing and the character stuff a lot, but like, if I were to do it as a series again, I would actually edit out all of the combat. It would just be the dialogue and exploring towns parts, and I kind of think that that's how they should have released the game, frankly. Tanner Scott asks, would you ever do a Dark Elves playthrough of Warhammer? This is a thing I've been asked a whole bunch over the last year or so, probably because the Dark Elves are they might be the only major faction I've not done a series as, and I just don't. This is going to sound a little bit weird probably, but this is the honest answer to this question. I don't want to play as a race of slavers. It's not the idea of slavery in the game offends me, and it's not like, well, I don't want to be a bad guy, because obviously I have a great deal of fun being Skaven and just like doing some truly awful things with doom rockets. But like I was talking about this a little bit in an earlier question, there are some kinds of evil that are fun and some kinds of evil that are not fun, and slavery is not fun for me. It might be because I'm an American, and in this country we are still very, very, very much wrestling with the consequences of a system of slavery that we used to build everything about our country. Or maybe it's just that like there's something about it that's inherently distasteful to me. I don't know exactly what it is, but every time I get a box pop up and ask me, hey, what do you want to do with the slaves? I just go, ugh. It's not like it doesn't, it's just unpleasant. I don't want to make decisions about what to do with the slaves. I don't think that's fun. So probably not unless there's a way to play a Dark Elf faction that doesn't have the slavery mechanic. If they someday release a legendary lord who is like completely zero slavery, probably we're just not going to do Dark Elves. And it's a shame because there is some cool stuff going on in their mechanics and they have some neat units, but I just do not enjoy the concept of spending that much time interacting with a mechanical system that is themed as slavery. It's a bummer for me. Parallax asks, is there a chance we will see another Renowned Explorers LP? I love the storytelling and the overall feel-good vibe. This is a thing that people ask for semi-frequently, actually, and I'm a little surprised by that because, first of all, the game is I would have thought pretty not that well known. I really worded that one poorly. And also, I feel like the existing Let's Play series, like, we saw everything, right? Like, we got that whole game out there. We saw many things multiple times. I think we've sort of wrung all the juice out of that particular game. So it's pretty unlikely that we will ever do another Renowned Explorers series. That game rules, and obviously I love the work that Abbey Games does. But I think we got that one. I think that one is in the can. Euphemistic Hug asks, what's the biggest emotional moment you've had playing video games, both on and off screen? In terms of on screen, I know what it is. There's a moment near the end of Disco Elysium where I broke down on camera pretty much, and I don't want to talk about it in any detail because first of all, I'm still kind of soft in that place. There is a wound that is still healing, but also obviously I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a moment in Disco Elysium where I actually considered cutting it out. Like, I considered cutting out that whole part of the game and then going back and replaying that bit at a sort of a more neutral emotional level and editing that in because I was kind of embarrassed about how much I fell apart and it was it's a little raw. But yeah, that's definitely the answer to that one. And then biggest emotional moment I've had playing games off screen. I am hard pressed to think of a single one, but there have definitely been some big ones. I'm a big emotions kind of guy. I cry a lot. That's always been true, and it's more true the last year or so because of some emotional trauma, some stuff that happened to me. So I don't know exactly, but there's definitely been some. I've cried about the fates of characters in JRPGs. I cried at the end of the first Harvest Moon. I'm just a big emotional doofus. So yeah, I have a lot of big emotional moments, unfortunately. Arcane Sandwich asks, how did you get into playing video games in the first place, and is there an experience or sensation from your early experiences with the hobby that you carry with you today? Well, I talked about how I got into playing video games in the first place, but I think a thing that I carry with me still, a thing that was like pretty important and formative, is that I had a great uncle and a great aunt who had a computer, and my great uncle was into I guess adventure games. Yeah, we'd say adventure games, and sitting down and playing those a little bit with him, and like the sense of exploration and discovery that those games gave, I think was really important to the way that I developed in the hobby. And so that I think about that a lot. That he had Myst. I saw Myst when it was like relatively newish, and that was like kind of mind blowing. I don't remember what the title of the game is, but there was a game where you play as like a princess or something, and it was very King's Quest, but you play as a woman, I believe. And also one of his old computers was how I played Castle Adventure, or whatever the heck the name of that game is. It's a very, very, very old adventure game called it's something like yes, it is called Castle Adventure, which I still think of as like one of the most elemental video games. When you play Castle Adventure, you are looking at the raw ideas that things are made out of, and it's kind of fascinating. Isolan asks, if you could combine any two games of your choice into one game, what would they be, and what would that game look and play like? I would like to see I don't really have a form for this, but I would like to see a game that has a strategy layer where the tactical layer of the game is Doom Eternal style first-person combat, where it's like a complicated combat loop with resource management, because I love the combat in Doom Eternal. I think it's incredible. It's brilliant work. I would like to see more games where there's a strategy element and a physical performance element like that. I don't think there are a lot of those, because I think that the audiences for those genres are mostly separate people. But I'm in both of them, and I would like to see those things combine a little bit more. Fortunately, like I guess a lot of like action games that have RPG systems do give you a little bit of an idea of a resource loop, but like the resource loop parts of them are too separate from. Like, there's not enough of a strategy layer, and the resource parts of them are too separate from the action layer to work as part of the action. I'm thinking in particular of, like, any game that has sort of, like, stealth combat, but also scavenging. So you have a resource thing going on that's like, well, I'll get the resources, and I'll use them to develop my RPG tree, and that will make me better at getting resources, but that's not really part of the combat. The sneaking up on people is mechanically sort of separated, even though you might do one of them and then the other one immediately afterward. You know, they don't really play into each other all that well. I think those systems either need to be brought closer together or further apart, but they're in kind of a weird uncanny valley right now. I kind of got away from the question, and I forgot what it was, but I hope I answered it. Thank you. And then finally here, we're going to go into the lightning round, because there were some people who took advantage of the form to just ask a huge number of questions. So I'm going to fly through these real quickly, because I'm looking over at the timer and seeing that we are well over 2 hours already. So, A Fourth Fool asks, rituals online feel utterly instructive, i.e. the channel, we upload the Q&A at 20k, it grows, the channel, we upload the... That's my thought. Question is underlying. If you do turn over the woodlog and talk about what you find under that thought, I'd be happy to listen. I don't 100% understand what you're saying, but I think this question is asking what I think about following sort of like the YouTube rituals, because I'm doing one right now, right? We hit a number that ended with a bunch of zeros, and so we do the Q&A. And like, is it is it actually valuable to stick to that kind of stuff? I have no idea. I think the vast majority of the sort of the common knowledge, the common wisdom about what works on YouTube and what helps you grow is guesswork, is arbitrarily sourced guesswork from people who seem authoritative because their number is high, but they don't actually know how they got there, so they're not necessarily in a position to offer advice. I do not have a lot of respect for the common YouTube rituals, which you probably have noticed based on the fact that I do not make my content in accordance with most of the common wisdom. My stuff is slower. It's probably a little bit more boring than most people would recommend, and I do not do a lot of calls to action or anything, in part because I find that stuff annoying, but also in part because I don't think there's a lot of evidence that it works. And also in part because if it does work, then I'm kind of getting some of the benefit anyway because so many other people are doing it that the audience is kind of trained a little bit, so I get to sort of ride on that without having to engage in it myself, probably. But yeah, I don't do things because they are accepted common wisdom. I did this because I wanted to talk about myself, basically. So, yeah, that's what's under that particular log, is that I don't think we have a lot of information. I think we have a lot of data, and that's a problem. But it's also a problem that's kind of unresolvable, because YouTube doesn't want us to know what's going on behind the scenes, because they don't want anybody reverse engineering any algorithms or anything. Hey, this was supposed to be the lightning round. Okay, we're going to go fast from here. What newsletter do you read? The Giant Bomb newsletter's pretty good. The World Tastes Important. Help? No. Best finished or retired or complete podcast? I kind of have two answers for this, but I'm going to talk faster to keep it lightning round themed. The Thrilling Adventure Hour is complete, and it's very, very good. There's a lot of really excellent stuff in there. Also, Alice Isn't Dead is complete, and while I don't necessarily think that it had a great ending, it has a lot of really, really good stuff throughout. It's just, it falls into sort of the central trap that I find with these kinds of stories, where it's like a story about conspiracy theory stuff, and they felt a need to try to resolve the conflict of the conspiracy theories in like a grand confrontation, and I've never seen that work anywhere. Part of what makes those stories compelling is that you are talking about systems that are too vast and Byzantine for a person to affect them, and I think your story has to stay in that place. You can't achieve meaningful closure on the conspiracy theory. It doesn't work, and they tried, and it didn't, because it doesn't. My TTRPG question is, have you read through blank from the Black Lives Matter bundle, by which I mean, I assume you mean all of the RPGs in it. And its sister question, what TTRPG are you excited about? And their mother question, what big changes are you seeing in the talk around TTRPGs, and which are you feeling? I have not read through many of the games in that bundle. In case you are not aware, when you bought the Black Lives Matter itch bundle, it's not just video games, there's a lot of tabletop RPG stuff in there too, and some of it is probably really cool, but I have not had the time to dig into any of it. And yeah, that's a bummer. That's a bummer that I mean to fix when I have the time to fix it. Which tabletop RPG am I excited about? I'm really looking forward to Necronautilus. I pledged on their Kickstarter, and I think that game is going to be out sometime in the next couple of months. And I think the theme is super cool, and I'm very excited to see what the final product looks like. And finally, big changes in the talk around TTRPGs. You know what I'm really excited about? This is another thing that's probably going to ruffle some feathers. I'm really excited to see so many people starting to talk about getting away from D&D. I think D&D is a very, very stale game. And what's beyond stale? It's worse than stale because they were trying to change things up, and then they went not just backwards, but like a lot backwards. They're intentionally beyond stale, and it's really frustrating to see the design decisions that have led to that, especially given the kinds of people that they listened to when gathering design feedback, and the kinds of people that they didn't listen to, which is me. I'm saying me. I was in the D&D 5 playtests. They didn't listen to any of my feedback. They did almost the opposite of everything I said, and the game's worse for it. That's it. I feel strongly about that thing. They did a bad job with D&D 5. It's not a good edition of the game, and I know that it's by far the most popular the game has ever been, and probably a lot of people disagree with me, but still I think this. So I love the fact that it seems like people are, thanks to Mike Merles and everything they're doing with D&D, a lot of people are talking about finding other games. That's the best thing that could possibly happen for the hobby, is a whole lot of people detaching themselves from D&D as the one RPG they play. Fan out. Find cool stuff. There's so much cool stuff happening out there in the hobby. Go search for it. You will have experiences that you will like better. I promise you. A Fourth Fool also asks, do you like a truckload of timestamps in comments? I actually do. I like those comments a lot, and I feel bad that I often don't respond to them, but the fact is, I often don't read the comments on series for a variety of reasons, such as trying to avoid being spoiled, because no matter how much I ask people not to do it, they do it. They don't listen to me. They think I don't know what's good for me, and they think they know what's better, and that's frustrating. But also, sometimes social anxiety stuff, sometimes it's actually really hard for me to look at the comments, even if they're all positive. Like, taking the step of looking at them to find out that they're all positive, it can be a very scary thing, and it's a thing I do not always have the emotional capacity for. And also, I just kind of run a style of thing that's a little bit less interactive than a lot of people do on the internet, and I don't think that that's all bad. And I know that's definitely against the common wisdom, but yeah. And finally, best place to open a window. I would try a wall. Okay, Planetfall has a lot of questions. Let's do it. What's the worst piece of media that you can't force yourself to dislike? That's a very complicated question because of all the different ways that the word worst could be used here. But I'm going to say, in terms of media that I don't disagree with, or that I really disagree with, but that I still find very charming, maybe The Incredibles. The Incredibles has some moral positions that I think are kind of baffling, but boy, it sure is slick and fun to watch, huh? And yeah. I'm trying to move fast. What's your favorite media that you've never read / played / watched, but had to bullshit your way through a conversation about? Never had this problem. I am the guy who watches the thing. I consume so much media, in part due to my attentional issue, meaning that I'm often consuming 2 pieces of media simultaneously. In some ways, it's like a superpower. Mostly, it's a curse and a prison, but in some ways, it's like a superpower, and one of the results of that is I have always seen the thing we're talking about. The Oxford comma, yay or nay? Also, Oxford comma or serial comma? The Oxford comma is objectively correct. I'm not taking any questions on this at this time. Steelman, the case that your favorite color is actually the worst. For those who are unfamiliar with the internet neologism Steelman, it's like the opposite of a straw man. I will not... No, orange is objectively the best color. Obviously, everyone knows this. It's absurd that such a case could even exist. Do you like haiku? I have no idea. Maybe haikus are good. Is there a word or phrase that you just can't stand for non-offense reasons? Yeah, as a person who is kind of a prescriptivist and also has a lot of thoughts about language in general, there are some things that really bother me about the way people speak. One thing I super dislike is the way the word meta is used sometimes now. People will use the word meta as a word that means the thing that streamers are doing. Like if you take an action in a game that is different from the actions that the most popular streamers take, people will say in the comments, "Oh, I don't know if you should do that. That's not meta." First of all, that's not what that word means. But secondly, like the phrase that is enabled by that meaning of the word, the argument that, hey, that's not meta, so you shouldn't do that, is almost always of negative value. Like, if players who are popular are doing a thing for a good reason, the thing you should say is the reason that it's a good thing to do that, not that it's a thing popular people do, not that it's a thing that is commonly done, right? Like the idea that it's valuable to just express, hey, that's the commonly done thing or that's not the commonly done thing is almost always... You should almost always be saying something different. And unfortunately, now that we have a way to easily say that's the commonly done thing, people do it all the time, and they shouldn't. That's a very petty thing, but I have it. Also, another petty thing is, there's a piece of English slang that bothers me for reasons I can't even put together. I don't like it when people say a thing works a treat. The phrase a treat used as an adverb to mean like very well. I don't know why that bothers me, but there's something about just like the grammatical shape of it that's nails on the chalkboard of my mind, man. Since this is a digital space, shouldn't milestones be measured by multiples of powers of 2 rather than 10? That's a really good point. We are well past the point where it would have been good to point that out, though. I cannot do anything about it now. Do you know any other languages? And programming languages count. Okay, good. Then the answer is yes. I've worked quite a bit in several different flavors of C, C# in particular. I'm quite familiar with Java, JavaScript. I'm less familiar with, but I could work in JavaScript if I need to. Of course, I've written games in BASIC because that's like a way that a lot of people start back in the day. I have worked in Haskell, but I don't like it because my brain is very object-oriented wired. Functional programming is terrifying to me. Also, I don't really know any other speaking languages aside from English. I do know an embarrassing number of words in Khazalid, the dwarf language from Warhammer Fantasy. Yeah. Rank national politicians in order of how cool their elemental powers would be. Absolutely not touching this at all. Who's your favorite Barathromite and why is it Q-Girl? Quetzal. What's your headcanon for how the bell knows in advance who will hear it in order to toll for them? Planetfall, don't you understand? The bell tolls for all of us. All of us. And finally, because this thing has gotten way too long, super lightning round, Agile Whisk asks, why are Q&As generally focused on the person hosting it? Logistics. Why are moss lawns superior to grass lawns? That would probably be because grass lawns are like a weird bit of normcore vanity, and the way that they compel people to burn resources and time in an attempt to measure themselves against an arbitrary, wasteful, and wholly artificial aesthetic standard is kind of a horrifying metaphor for a number of things about our society, and moss lawns are less so. But I think they're both inferior to clover. Who ate my sandwich? You did. Why is my phone dead? Oh, it knows what it did. Why is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Or what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Okay, you didn't commit the sin, but I'm going to rant about it anyway. I am not accusing you, Agile Whisk, of anything. But it drives me crazy that there are so many people who are like, the meaning of life is 42, is the thing. It's a very, holds up spork kind of thing. People who have not actually read The Hitchhiker's Guide and don't understand what was happening just think that this is a funny random fact from a funny random book. The meaning of life is not... 42 is the answer to the great question of life, the universe, and everything. And after that there's a lot of effort put into discovering that. And after it is discovered, we realize that we did not know what the question was. Now we have the answer to the great question, but we didn't realize that we didn't know what the question was, really. And so there's a significant amount of effort then spent on trying to figure out what the question of life, the universe, and everything is. And we never find out because the Earth is destroyed. And that is a more complicated version of that thing than you might think. But eventually we do get what we're told is a wrong but kind of close version of the question. And that is, what do you get when you multiply 6 by 9? And it's ambiguous whether this is actually a version of the question or not, but I kind of love the idea that it is, that the actual question, the great question of life, the universe, and everything, is what do you get when you multiply 6 by 7? I think there's a profundity to that gets elided by the fact that people like to say a thing that sounds fun and random, but, those books are really good. Actually read those books, everybody, please. Back to the actual questions. Back to things that Agile Whisk actually did say. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Swallows can't fly. It's all smoke and mirrors. I'm sorry that this is how you had to find that out. Is the color red that I see the same color that you see? Or do we both just identify it as red because that is what we were taught to identify as red? My dude, how can red be real if our eyes aren't real? Who ate my sandwich? I did. And I'm not sorry. What genre of music is objectively the best? Anything played on a hurdy-gurdy. Why is seltzer water called seltzer in the north, but soda water in the south? That's just lazy world building. Out of every fictional universe you've ever heard of, what would be the worst one to exist in as a background character? That's gotta be Warhammer 40k, right? Tanks? For all the fish. Who ate my sandwich? You did. Who's a good boy? Well, now that's a hell of a question. I mean, who among us can truly be said to be good? And what is goodness? Anyway, it's me. I'm a good boy. Bueller? Anyone? Can you smell what the rock is cooking? Yes, and it's cod. What color was Elvis Presley's hair? How can Elvis's hair be real if our eyes aren't real? Who ate my sandwich? Agile-Whisk, didn't anyone tell you? That sandwich has been dead for 70 years. Who died on Reach? Everyone. Why am I hungry? Because I ate your sandwich. And we're back in the 20s again, so where's the swing music? I answered this already, but Google Caravan Palace. How much time was wasted on this comment? All of it. Everything we had. Did you take into account your own time? No, I never do. Alright, and I think with that, we've actually reached the end here. Hey, this took way longer than I thought it was going to, in a bunch of different ways, because obviously also this was supposed to come out on Friday. But thank you all so much for asking, and for listening, and for caring, and for, watching the channel and stuff. I really appreciate it, more than I can possibly say. So I'm not going to try to say anymore, because I just said that it would be impossible to get it across. But I really do appreciate it. Come back next time, tomorrow, for more video games, and maybe a little bit less me talking. And we'll see you then.